as a lawyer. So yes, to help people, but I really believe it's a process and a system, and that lawyers in many ways are the only people that stand between you, me, and the government in many ways, or other entities. So I don't want to say we're heroes because we're not all the time, but when you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, this is Max Piven from WriteForMe, and you're listening to another episode of the Business Ninjas podcast, where we meet the experts who are making things happen and scaling the businesses. And today we're talking about Jimmy Crawford and Associates with Mr. Jim Crawford, who is the CEO at JC Law. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here, Max.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to chat with us and tell your story. And I'm excited to dive into all the great things you guys are doing within the community at JC Law. And you guys are focused specifically within the family law space, also in business litigation and criminal litigation. And the firm itself has been around since 1992. And I'm excited to dive into the history with you and dive into what's going on there at the firm. But before we jump into the organization itself, our community is built of entrepreneurs and executives and also lots of sales and marketing leaders. So it's a very broad market that listens to the podcast here. So as the CEO and founder at JC Law, or maybe that's in the family, I'd love it if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the things you're focused on to give our community a little introduction to yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm a Baltimore City blue collar family raised in Southwest Baltimore City, lawyer that went to night school at University of Baltimore. Actually paid my way through it as I went. Student loans were not actually a big part of society back then as much as they are now. So I started practicing, and my thought process from the beginning actually was really to simply open up a firm and start practicing. My father had practiced law for a long time, since 1961, and I give him a little bit of credit when credit's due as far as the history of this firm. He practiced with Peter Angelo's M&P for many, many years. And when I started practicing, believe me, if you had a legal issue, I was chasing you down the street to try to find you because I was going to handle that legal issue. I don't care what it was. So it started out, I guess you could call it humble beginnings. I really, truly believe and still do believe in the mantra as far as what a lawyer is supposed to do for society and the roles that a lawyer plays still in our community and what we can do and how we can help people, not just navigate the issue that they're in, but also navigate businesses, navigate thought processes, and try to get them to where they need to be. The practice of law is messy at times, it's ugly at times, it's great at times, it's beautiful at times, but that's what we were taught to do in law school, and that's the role that a lawyer plays. So as time went on, I was an elected official years ago, always been involved in politics. I think you and I talked about a book that I wrote not too long ago. It's called An American Lawyer. It's actually very interesting. It gets into a lot of politics in Maryland and Baltimore City that my family is involved in, still is involved in many ways. I don't reveal too many dark secrets, but there's enough in there to keep people reading. Makes it interesting. And because of that political career, I was able to parlay that into opening a small firm and then eventually growing into where we are now, into a regional firm, and we're still growing. So that's kind of a nutshell of what we do and what I've done and where I've come from. I'm still in many ways that Baltimore City lawyer that's just beginning in many ways.
I love it. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, everyone, for they missed it, but check out the American Lawyer, written by Jim. I appreciate you sharing definitely, more information about your background and your story and to how you got started in law, right? And and also what motivated you, to start your firm? What would you say, what was that maybe that core motivation for you specifically? Was it like just being a part of the community? I'm just kind of curious.
No, actually, that's an interesting question. And, if you ask 80% of lawyers, they're going to tell you, I want to help other people. And I think that's probably true. And it is true. And it's something that certainly motivated me. When I grew up, and I'm revealing my age a little bit, but I grew up in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But back in the 60s, Baltimore in this country was a very, very different place. And there was a lot of changes, civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, John F. Kennedy. And so I grew up in a politically charged atmosphere, in Baltimore City and in Maryland, throughout Maryland, because my father was involved in many, many political races, not just judicial races, city council races, U.S. Senate races, gubernatorial races, even the presidential races. And so I grew up in that, and I was, politically motivated, and I still believe truly in my heart that, about the Constitution and individual liberties and rights, and how important it is to fight for those things. So I have to say that really is what motivated me. Now, of course, my father practicing law, and I got to hang around Peter Angelo's office as a kid and see what he did in many ways for years. So I was around the industry as a kid, and I got to feel it, touch it, see it, and that kind of made me into the thought process that I have as a lawyer. So yes, to help people, but I really believe it's a process and a system. Mm-hmm. And that lawyers in many ways are the only people that stand between you, me, and the government in many ways, or other entities. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to say we're heroes because we're not all the time, but when you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer.
Absolutely. So as the founder, Jim, it sounds like there's definitely some core values and principles that you've instilled, within the culture itself. How would that translate, to the work that you guys are doing maybe for your clients?
Well, it's we hire so many people, and we're very particular about the lawyers we have, and that ties into the process that we have. When I first started hiring people and just started expanding and growing many years ago, very rudimentary in the thought process about the type of lawyer we wanted or the type of staff member we wanted. And because we wanted them to reflect our thought process and our belief system and also what we want to do to try to help the client and to be part of the legal community. As time has gone on, we've learned that you have to be very proactive in doing that. The law schools across the country, and we have a big clerking system that we use. We bring in a lot of clerks every year throughout the country, and it's very interesting seeing the thought process of these young soon-to-be lawyers, mm-hmm. and what they think about the industry and what they think about business and how they perceive and what they believe their job is as a lawyer. And the bottom line is that there's a lot of great law schools around, but and I've spoken to quite a few people, deans, boards. The law schools are lacking in many ways as far as the development and keeping up with society about what society needs with lawyers. They're still pumping out the basic thing. Yes, they do things like they have some classroom schedules, and they do things, but the old system, for example, like University of Baltimore, it was accredited many years ago, and this is true with a lot of law schools across the country, used to have a lot of lawyers like me teaching the courses. And therefore, these students got a lot of perspective as far as what they're going to be doing in the community, how it really works, and what practicing law is all about. And I'm not saying that the law schools aren't doing a good job in many, many areas. They've come a long way, but that is one of the largest areas I see in the legal community across the country that we as lawyers and the legal profession need to improve. A lot of these students coming out of law school at 26, 28 years old still don't have their first mortgage.
Yeah.
They're not making enough money to pay their student loans. They haven't lived life enough to really see it, and they're not being prepared. As compared to the medical schools across the country, my youngest daughter just graduated from a very prestigious medical school in Philadelphia. They do nothing. The last 2 years in the medical profession, they're hands-on, and they're in the industry. They're taking care of patients. They're at many hospitals, doctors' offices. So they're teaching them more hands-on. That's one of the things that law schools need to acquire, and they need to work with firms. They rely on firms like us to really basically teach after the fact. So in learning the principles, back to your question and about what it takes a while for a new lawyer to really understand and to be able to focus. It's like a new Major League Baseball player standing up and play the first time. The ball's coming in pretty fast, and eventually the ball slows down. You can see the type of pitch. That's what happens with the new lawyers, and we try to teach them. Yeah. So we try to focus. We have something called it's a little corny, but I think I talked to you about it previously, the Circle of Excellence. And so everybody that comes into this firm, I don't care which state you're in, where you are, you're going to attend and you have to graduate from the Circle of Excellence. I don't care if you're my age, you've been coming out of law school, you've got to go through that. And we're teaching them basic principles that they need to understand to try to service the clients. Clients need lawyers more than ever before in this country. Ever before. Everybody's so litigious. You have major government entities. Every time you walk down the street, you're being confronted. You need this, you need that, or you're being told this or told that. More than ever, people need a lawyer or a firm or somebody to go to help them navigate these things.
Yeah.
And it can't be spending a gazillion dollars every time you pick up the phone and talk to the client. That's why we developed something called the Perfect Client Life Cycle, which I think is really going to fundamentally change the nature of practicing law in this country if we get an opportunity to expand it the way we want to expand it. And it's really puts clients in a position where they can work with us, work with a lawyer, and be able to afford it, and also understand what it's going to cost them and the big picture. So I know from what I've seen and the clients that we deal with, it's revolutionized their thought process. They're actually happy many times, which is hard to create when you have somebody who has a major legal problem.
Sure.
So that's what we're trying to get across with a lot of the lawyers that in the firm, not just here, but in Pennsylvania, DC, and Virginia.
Very cool. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing kind of like what you're looking for sure, and the strategy that you built and the team that you're building there to help in supporting your clients. Let's talk a little bit about like those clients that you're partnering up with. I mentioned at the top that there's a focus in family law, criminal defense, and obviously a wide variety of other subsegments of law as well, including like business litigation, maybe personal injury. So like how are you guys like focusing on those specific areas? Do you have are there particular passions or specializations there within the firm?
Well, a lawyer should never say, according to the American Bar Association and most state bars, that they specialize, unless you're licensed or you're given a pass to do that. Some states have that. So I won't say we specialize, but our firm focuses on, I call it domestic law, which is really an expanded family law. We deal in litigation, business litigation, and major criminal representation or litigation on a federal level, state level. If you see it on the news, we're probably involved somehow, at least in some of the bigger cases.
Mhm.
So we do a lot of that. I will say this overall, in the 32 years I've been practicing, I have the state of the average client is so skeptical of not just lawyers, but of industries across the board in business, especially when you're dealing with courts, when you're dealing with prosecutors, when you're dealing with other entities, other businesses. They're almost angry, and they're so skeptical because of what's happened over the last decade, 2 decades. When you have politicians that can look right at you and say the sky's not blue when it is, it confuses people. When you have somebody, a client who's being accused unjustly, and you have to tell them that under our society, people have the right to make any accusation they want to, and they ask, well, what are the consequences when it's proven that I didn't do this? No real consequences except that you're found not guilty and you walk away. There's a lot of skepticism, a lot of anger, a lot of just not trusting people. So we have to overcome that, and we overcome that in several ways. The first way is we try to show people that we are the experts. Okay, we live this, we live and die this, we've dealt with this, we've done it many, many times. And although we have recognized that your situation is unique, we've been through this before many times, and we can help you achieve what needs to be achieved. So I would say just client skepticism. That's a big problem. Not just us with in many industries across the country. I know COVID played a little part of that. I don't know if you experienced this or not, but it's funny. When COVID first hit, we had an emergency meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning in my board, and we didn't know what we were dealing with. All you could see was the government and state and federal, everybody was panicking around us. And so we had to figure out what we were going to do. And where we go, not even understanding what was happening totally. And we navigated that very well. And the reason we navigated that is because we were able to pivot very quickly with our policies and thought processes. Because nobody knew, mask one day, no mask the next day, wash your hands every 10 minutes, don't touch people, stand 10 feet back, don't go outside. You would see people driving down the roads with a mask on in their car by themselves. So nobody knew what to expect or what's happening as far as that's concerned.
Sure.
But we were able to navigate that. And it's funny, there's a lot of residuals that are still happening as a result of that. People would retain us, just like we're talking right now, over video or over the phone, and they were happy to do it. Now, what's happened is they want the convenience of the video. They want the convenience of something quick. They don't necessarily want to pay or retain right then, but to try to get them in, it's an inconvenience to them. But the bottom line is that once they're in front of a live lawyer human being, they're going to feel much more comfortable.
Sure.
And we're going to be able to guide them. But people have kind of lost that.
Yeah.
They forget. They forgot about the one-on-one communication and trust and what it's like. So that's where we work very hard with that, trying to bring people in and keep that communication open.
Yeah. I'm not in person with you right now, right? Like we're doing this over video. Our world's changed a lot for sure. And it's good to kind of hear like where you guys provide that value. It sounds like a little bit of that secret sauce is obviously the expertise and authority that you've built out for sure. But maybe even like communication, right? Like I assume communication is a big piece of like your approach and like keeping client communication, ensure everybody's like well informed, throughout the legal process. Like how are you guys like, approaching that communication using any technology, any software, or is it, I'm just kind of curious to understand like how you guys are communicating that.
I think we're probably one of the most sophisticated law firms, at least we're the top 5-10% across the country. We have a lot of different methodologies, electronic apps, new apps. We're constantly doing a lot of different things regarding that. But, like any business, and I've said this before many times, we are a law firm, we're lawyers, we provide, counseling, we act like lawyers, we behave like lawyers, and we do things that we're supposed to do as lawyers. But, the issue really becomes if you can't sell to a prospective client, you can never help them. That's just like if they don't know about you, you can't help them. I can't tell you how many times people call me, without exaggeration, I can say thousands of times over my years, after the fact, where if they would have gotten to me or someone in my firm beforehand, their problem would have been either solved, mitigated, or fixed. And so my first perspective is that when we talk to a new PNC, potential new client, if we don't do our job in effectively communicating and allowing them to see the benefits of, number one, just having a lawyer, number two, having a lawyer that understands what's going on, and number three, helping them navigate the legal system, then we're not doing our job. So if we can't bring them in and teach and show them, we're not doing our job. And that's the bottom line. So yes, we use a lot of different technology for that. We have intake people 24/7. We have a sales group. We have a media group. We have, one of the things we've used for years is HubSpot. It's kind of like the sales, force type product. But so a lot of communication, automatic text, automatic this. And the lawyers that come in here, we teach them that sales is not a bad word. It's not a bad word. It's, we're a law firm practicing law, but we're really a business perfecting the art of practicing law. So it's not a bad word. And in fact, if you use the word sales and you're standing in front of a jury and you're able to sell that jury, that's a good thing for the client. I mean, that's what that client wants. This is an adversarial system. We got rules. Both sides are given rules. My thought process, and I preach to my managers, to my directors all the time, use those rules. They're there for a reason. If you don't use every opportunity and possible discovery tool, communication tool, a litigation tool, then you're not doing your job for your client. The question that should be asked in any case that a lawyer handles is not should we do something. The question is if we do it, why shouldn't we? And it may be because of finances for the client. There may be a lot of strategic reasons for that, but it's absolutely essential that you think of it as in an adversarial system. So, but our main job is we got to let them know that we can help them. If we don't let them know that, then they can't be helped.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny to kind of hear the correlations there. I mean, there's certain words like, just discovery. Lawyers do a lot of discovery, just like any salesperson is doing during the initial conversation to discover if there's even a need that can be solved for, or a challenge that's out there that we could potentially be solving. And ideally, like you're there as a partner for them, right? You're there to represent them. So and you're also there to sell that story, right? Whatever that is, to whoever that is, too. But you need to research the heck out of it as well. So it's funny to hear like you kind of talk about the business of being a lawyer, and like how are you guys as a business, planning to grow and scale and opening up to new markets?
Well, I tell you, it's amazing because some of the thought process that we've developed over the years, as soon as we started to use them and apply them, and people started seeing what we were doing. It was kind of, I don't want to say it's a secret before. And it's not just being a good lawyer. There are a lot of good lawyers that do their job and are really, really good at what they do, but they don't understand business. And that's okay. Not every lawyer has to be a business professional. Not every doctor has to be a business professional. But my thought process is that if you don't have people like me, and there's others, many others, that can take a thought process, take a product, and be able to reach out and allow for change to occur, the industry's never going to improve. Never going to improve. And people for years have been saying, the law, the legal field's going to change. And, they've been saying this, and you have really two basic big fields. You have the firms that are housed in like DC and New York and Miami and Honolulu. They're the type of, firms that do a lot of transactional type work over the country, around the world. But then you have the service law firms, which makes up probably about 80% of the firms in this country. And they're the firms like us that have the firsthand contact with the average citizen. And that's the type of firm that's going to really be subject to change. Over the years, believe it or not, you've heard of Rocket Lawyer. You've heard of that. It's a service that came out years ago that provides, self-help type lawyering. Everybody predicted, it's just going to fade away. It's not going to do this. It's not going to do that. And you still don't hear lawyers talking about it. And it's still a sneaky little thing. But if you look at their market share, there's a big, big part of the legal work each year that gets done by that type of group. And there's a few others. And that tells me that people don't want to deal with lawyers many times. If they can do it themselves, they feel like it's too expensive to go to a lawyer. It's too much of a hassle. So the legal industry, lawyers like me, we're not doing enough to take care of our clients. For too long, the legal industry has kind of like put its nose up and said, we're the legal industry. You come to us and you're going to have to play in our sandbox. And that's particularly true with a lot of the judiciary and courts, because they have some powers that most people don't have. They can lock people up. They can put people in jail for their life. They can take away property. They can make people do things. So it's an awesome responsibility and power. And we have some really good judicial judges across this country that really take that seriously. But none of us, including the judiciary, is not doing enough to really help, meet the citizens of this country halfway to do what needs to be done to help them accomplish what they want to accomplish. Why? Because they'd rather sit there at night, go on Rocket Zoom or whatever the heck it is, and do it without having to interact with a lawyer when they still don't know what the heck they're doing. They still don't know. They finish the product, they do it. They don't know. They don't know what they're missing. They can read a little bit about it and do this, but they still don't know. They don't have that comfort like you would have if I sat and told you, guess what? This is the way it is. This is going to work, and you're good. That's different than sitting there at night trying to figure out your own problem. So we have a long way to go, and I recognize that, and that's part of the gap we're trying to close.
For sure. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing kind of like your view of the space in general. It's definitely a complex and can also be probably intimidating, I assume, for people like myself and individuals and trying to figure out the right legal representation for themselves. And so I appreciate you sharing like how you guys are prioritizing, a client and their comfort and support during like these really stressful times that I'm sure everyone is going through that you're working with.
Yeah.
So, from, an outside perspective, I'd love to understand, how are you guys like, getting out into the marketplace? Like what, from a marketing perspective, as the owner and CEO, right? Like what are some of the ways that you guys are getting that message out into the marketplace, and how can people find you guys?
Well, obviously digitally. I mean, that's become the number one methodology that we use and a lot of law firms use. I can remember 15 years ago, I think I was one of the first in Maryland lawyers to have a website. maybe about 18 years ago. But now everybody has it. So digital marketing, digital contact is obviously there. We're on other media as well. We're papers, magazines, TVs, things like that, radio. But digital is the best way to do it. If you have an issue, just call, go on the website and chat, or set up a consultation. It can be done 24/7. When you call, you're going to talk to one of our lawyers. So you'll have someone who is designated to give you real answers about what you may need to do to try to solve your problem. I've always been fascinated, about media. So although I run this company, I've got a lot of people to help me do that, but I still keep a heavy hand in media. I love it. I love the thought process of it. I love seeing companies that start from humble beginnings and grow. And it's kind of like a life. It's kind of, because it means so much to so many different people, to the employees, to people that you help, and to the founders. So most fail, but not all. But a lot of different media type thought processes. What you're doing right now, I think that you and what you do is the future of many, many different things. Not just sitting talking to some lawyer like me, but people getting news, understanding that. I think much like the campaign, 8 years ago, the presidential campaign, how Twitter played a major part. I think this year you're going to see people like you and a lot of other bloggers and podcast people who are going to change the nature of how people receive information. Not just like information about me as a lawyer or my firm or the legal industry, but news. And we're seeing it already, Joe Rogan and people like that. But that is changing as we speak. So you're definitely on the forefront of that major change.
Yeah, it's a growing industry, sure. The Joe Rogans, I'd say, are the outliers of the world, where their contracts are hundreds of millions of dollars. But every business, if you're not creating content, you're not going to exist at the end of the day. Every company should be thinking like a media company, and that's straight from Gary Vaynerchuk. So I'll steal that from him. But it's just a fact, right? And that's why we're doing what we do, because it is a growing space. You want to be able to tell your company's unique value prop. You want to be able to give thought leadership. You want to be able to, talk about the culture and all the things you're doing, and also, entertain and like tell some stories, like, build an audience. Like if you're not building an audience on other channels, then you're going to be missing out, and your competitors are going to start, building audiences there and start stealing your clients and customers. So, we see thought leadership podcasts like the one we've created, and the ones that that we see out in the marketplace are ones that are there to help support and continue to tell that story ubiquitously, across a multi-channel, multi-platform approach. So, the website looks great. Everyone go check out jamescrawfordlaw.com. They make it really easy for you to get a hold of someone. There's a chat function, there's calling, there's form fills, and they're definitely they set up the website, you can tell, for the best in class practice to start conversations, to be able to get the questions that you need answered and determine if they're a fit to help you with your needs. So I appreciate you sharing your story with me, James. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to do the podcast with us. Before we leave, right, definitely want to give you the floor. Any advice that you might have, for people that are, that might be looking for you guys into why they should come with you, or, maybe you're looking for that assistance. We'd love to just kind of give you the floor really quick as we finish up.
Well, I guess what I would say is, if anybody's listening to this and they have a legal issue, I don't care if it's me or some other firm, start sooner rather than later. Because the longer you wait, whatever legal issue it is, it could be a domestic situation, it could be a criminal situation. Or so many people that I see put themselves and bury themselves much deeper because they procrastinate. And I get it; it's scary. It is what it is. But you've got to take that first step. Reach out and talk to someone that you feel comfortable with. Even if you don't know them, then just pick someone. Just chat and talk. once you get into it, you're going to feel much more comfortable. So we're a litigious society. And I said it's not going to change anytime soon. And unless you're going to go to law school, unless you're going to focus, it's like anything else. When I need a plumber, I'm not going to go learn how to do. I'm going to hire someone who's an expert with that, and that's the same in the legal industry. Okay, so get started sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Yeah, everyone who's listening, definitely, if you have any needs, reach out to Jim here. Again, it's jamescrawfordlaw.com is the best place to get a hold of him. I appreciate you doing this with us, and as a successful founder and attorney, and giving your advice, also to aspiring lawyers and also individuals looking to get the legal representation they need. I appreciate you sharing your story with us and our community.
Max, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
You bet. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. That wraps up another episode of the Business Ninjas podcast. Have a great rest of the day. Cheers.
Max, take care. Thank you.